Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the All Candidates Forum. Just before we start, some safety instructions for you. If there is any emergency, please make your way to the end, the doors you came in, and there are 4 exit doors there to make your way out. If you need the washrooms are to the left outside those doors, and you will find them there to the left. My name's Henry Kearney. I'm the president of the Rocky Ridge and Royal Oak Community Association. This event is a collaborative event co-hosted by our 15 communities. And in particular, I'd like to thank Jim Palmer, Kirk Schmidt, Jonathan Neufeld for their help in planning the forum. Thanks also to the Victory Church for donating the space and assisting with logistics, and to the volunteers who are here tonight. A big thank you to you all. We're also grateful to Kirk Schmidt for moderating this forum, who's a former president of the Tuscany Residents Association. The forum is being recorded live, also will be available on YouTube and other social media platforms. Thank you to Dave Chung for his efforts to set up the AV equipment, record this event and offer it on the YouTube and, as I said, those other platforms. Please extend your thanks to them all while you can. Thank you. This forum is an example of what community associations do. For the most part, we're volunteer operated and provide programs and services to the communities we serve. We dialogue regularly with the local government representatives regarding a number of matters, including traffic, safety, development, and more. For those of you here today who are not community association members, I would encourage you to support your community by becoming a member. You might also consider volunteering in your community, as we all appreciate those extra hands and the minds. Remember, the advance polls open on October the 11th for 4 days, and the general election is Monday, October the 21st. Please exercise your right to vote. Finally, thank you to the 5 candidates for their willingness to serve the constituents and the one who's missing tonight in our riding, and for participating in this forum. Finally, thank you for your time, and I'll now hand over the forum to Kirk. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So we actually have 6 candidates in the riding. Unfortunately, one, the NDP candidate, Nathan Forden, was unable to attend due to a medical procedure that he had done a few days ago. So that is why you do not see him up here. Otherwise, we do have representation from the Liberal Party, the Conservative Party, the People's Party, the Green Party, as well as an independent candidate. Questions were solicited from members of the community, and so the questions I will be asking are from questions that were submitted to us. We are not going to be taking any questions from the floor tonight. If you do have further questions, please feel free to come up to the candidates afterwards or contact the candidates individually, and I'm sure they'd be happy to answer them. Tonight is not about personal attacks. This is about learning why these individuals want to run for the parties that they want to run for, and why they want to represent you in Parliament. So that goes for both the candidates and people here. Please no heckling, please no applause kind of at inopportune times. I would ask that you applaud after all candidates have had an opportunity to answer a question. So once the round is over, I encourage you to applaud all of the candidates for that. Candidates will be held to their time limits. I have been known to cut off candidates before. Without further ado, I had everybody start in the nerdiest way possible, which is by random dice roll. So we are actually going to be starting with Pat Kelly. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and tell us, why they want to run, why they're running for the party they are.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all the community associations, their volunteers, and to you, moderator Kirk Schmidt, for making tonight's forum possible. My family's long been engaged with the Ranchlands Community Association, but these past 4 years have given me a chance to see the great work that all the community associations in this riding do. I also want to thank each of the other candidates for their willingness to serve and for making the democratic process possible. I grew up in this riding. I've raised my family here, and since my election, I've served on a number of parliamentary committees, including ethics and public accounts. In 2017, I was named to Andrew Scheer's shadow cabinet as Shadow Minister for National Revenue, and it's been an honor and a privilege to serve you. As Member of Parliament, many people have come to my constituency office and told me heartbreaking stories of long-term unemployment and the damage done to Alberta's economy by this current Liberal government. Alberta was a beacon for economic opportunity for decades, and now it languishes as this city has the highest unemployment rate of any major city in Canada. Yesterday, while door knocking, I talked to a man who hasn't worked in 4 years. The day before, I heard about 7 divorces in one block as families come apart under the stress of Calgary's prolonged job crisis. All this has to stop. We have to get people back to work. We have to have a federal government that respects Alberta, a federal government that will champion the Canadian energy industry and not be ashamed of it. We need leadership in Ottawa, and I have seen up close just how frivolous this government has been and how indifferent it has been to the ongoing economic crisis in Alberta. People need hope, and tonight I look forward to sharing a positive Conservative vision for Canada.
Thank you. Katrina?
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you very much for having me here today, and thank you to the organizers. I acknowledge that we are on the land of the Treaty 7 people. I also honor the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. I'm happy to start out with a land acknowledgement because we are all settlers or descended from settlers, and true lasting reconciliation with Indigenous nations is central to the Green Party's plan. The Green Party isn't really a political organization as much as we are a group of people who really care about making everything better for everyone based on the best available knowledge. So when you think about the Green Party, think about kindness and science. Science is what the knowledge of the world is based on. Using science as our guide, we know to follow the IPCC guidelines, which means reducing emissions 60% below 2005 levels by 2030 and to net zero by 2050. Only the Green Party has this target and the plan to get us all to 2030 and beyond together. It's not only climate that needs immediate urgent action, but also biodiversity loss and the mass consumption of resources that we are consuming so fast we are going to start running out of things by 2050. But I have good news. There is still hope for the future. My big hope is that saving our environment is the one common mission that can unite us all. Saving our environment equals more jobs, which we all want. The Green Party plan will create over 4 million jobs in solar, wind, geothermal, and energy efficiency retrofits. Plus, we'll justly transition workers. Also, we will bring in national pharmacare, guaranteed livable income, and we will plant 10 billion trees. Let's change endless consumerism into endless volunteerism.
Todd?
Thank you, Kirk. My name is Todd Cathall. I'm the Liberal candidate for the riding, and thanks to Jim Palmer and his volunteers for getting this together. And thanks everybody for coming out tonight. I'll tell you a bit about myself. I've lived in Northwest Calgary since I was 12. I went to Branton Junior High and Aberhart High School, and that's in fact where my 2 teenage kids are going right now. I went to the University of Calgary where I got a business degree in 1988, which was our great Olympic year. And then I went to law school in Ontario. Don't hold that against me. I came right back, and I've been working downtown for the same law firm as a litigation lawyer for over 25 years. My wife and my sister-in-law run a small business in Northwest Calgary. They employ about 12 people, so I'm a Calgary guy. Now, I've never done anything politically before this, and I'll tell you why I got involved, why I threw my hat in the ring here tonight. I don't like seeing Alberta being left behind in the Canadian economy, but I don't think that Canadians turning on each other is the answer. I've got a lot of good friends and family in the States, but I don't want to follow their political lead. I've only got a single passport, and it's got a maple leaf stamped on it. My vision for Canada is one where everybody gets a fair shot. The basic building blocks are easy. Good public schools, fair access to secondary education, good public health care, and yes, that includes pharmacare. Give everyone a chance to get on their feet and let the economy take its course. The other issue that's critical to me is action on climate change. Conservative leaders want to step back, lock arms, kill carbon tax, slow down climate action. I don't think that's responsible, and based on what I've heard from people at the doors in this riding, sitting on our hands or kicking this can down the road for another 4 years is not what the people of Rocky Ridge want to see. As your MP, I'll pay attention to everybody's interests, and I promise I will not take your vote for granted.
Thank you. Tyler?
Just wanted to thank everybody for coming out tonight, everybody in attendance, including the candidates and the volunteers for the event. For many years, Alberta has been neglected by all parties, by career politicians that take our contribution to this country for granted. As a working class tradesman, I have suffered alongside many of you in our recent economic and social hardships. We have all felt the undermining of Albertans, our shared values, our culture, our economic industries, and contributions on a personal level. This shift from a definitive two-party system has evolved into two parties that are eroding the core pillars of the PPC platform: personal responsibility, individual freedom, fairness, and respect. There's a reason that the PPC is the fastest growing party in Canadian history. It's because we are different from the other parties, and why I'm here before all of you today. We are the only party on the ballot that will balance the budget in one term, the only one to take a stand against political correctness and censorship, defending freedom of speech, using the Constitution to build needed pipelines in the national interest, reforming the unfair equalization formula, and serving Canadians first. All other options on the ballot do not have a plan to balance the budget in one term. They subscribe to some form of climate alarmism or UN-based policies and prefer corporate interests over those of working class Canadians. This shift away from common sense is what motivated me to run as a member of Parliament. My name is Tyler Poulin, and I wish to do politics differently on behalf of all Canadians, all Albertans, with the People's Party of Canada. Thank you.
Thank you. And Shelley?
My name is Shaoli Wang. As my name indicated, I'm from China. I'm here for only 12 years. Didn't have any plan to join the election. It happened only a month ago, 7th of September. 3 of my local friends encouraged me to join the election. I didn't know there's a chance, but when they showed me there is a chance, I have no excuse to stop there. So I stepped forward. It's not for me, it's for people's voice. And as my friends' reason to encourage me to step forward, they said, you have the balls to tell the truth. And at the time, we do need the guy to step forward. And we choose you. And yeah, I'm happy to accept that. Now, what I see, the ugly truth here now in Canada is we have a big, fat, ineffective government, all 3 levels. I have personal experience, physical evidence against 20 provincial and federal government departments. Most of them in my website already. They need a decent cut. And above that, all our seniors, disabled, deserve a decent life. We need to bring them out of poverty right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all the candidates. So now we're going to move who starts. So Katrina will start with answering the first question, and we'll continue that method throughout tonight. So quite a few candidates have already talked about the economy a little bit, so why don't we start there? What policies do you or your party support to steward Canada's economy?
I think we have such a huge opportunity that we are not currently using. Quite honestly, we can put so many people to work, more people than we have available to do the jobs. If we begin retrofitting all our buildings, if we put together our national energy grid, if we bring in geothermal, which there's so many opportunities here because we have all these abandoned oil wells, let's put them to use. We also have the ability to put in rail cars and redo our light rail. We can put a rail line from Calgary to Edmonton. We can also start planting trees, which is also more jobs. So I think the point is not to get stuck, not to feel that we only have oil, because we have so many other things that we can do. Thank you.
Todd?
Thank you. So there's no magic wand for this. Alberta needs to move forward, and I think there's two short answers on this. One is it's plain that America is not buying our oil and gas anytime soon. We need to get our energy to new markets. And at the same time, we need to diversify both our people and the training of our people and our industries. And so these can happen at the same time. The Liberal Party has been committed to the expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which will bring our energy to new markets. And at the same time, there's a nice Canadian balance here, which is the use of profits from that pipeline, and the sale of that pipeline eventually will be put into green projects. And in the meantime, we need to make sure that our engineers, our students are trained and disciplined in industries above and beyond oil and gas, including solar and next generation green projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Tyler?
The average families in our riding will save over $3,000 annually with our simplified tax system that we're proposing. And we are the only party with a plan to balance the budget in one term. The other parties, without that kind of a plan, this becomes generational debt that will affect our children and our grandchildren. By eliminating the capital gains tax and lowering the cost to do business, the private sector will drive growth and prosperity, adding billions of dollars to the economy. Businesses, big and small, will be able to hire new employees, increase salaries, and focus on continuous growth and development.
Thank you. Shelley?
Yes. Most of our major parties' plans, like tax cuts, incentives for business, are about money. But all of them are shy of talking about a balanced budget. It's unacceptable. You don't run your family into deficit. You don't mortgage your kids for your trip to Hawaii. That is stupid. So we need to have a plan to balance our budget first before talking about those incentives, tax cuts. Well, I'm happy they're all aware our tax is high already. We do need to cut that. But how? Cut the government first. The government is inefficient. They are abusing their power too much. At the same time, abuse our money, our hard-earned tax money. Thank you.
And Pat?
Thank you. My Conservative colleagues and I, if we are elected and form government, we're going to do exactly what we have been urging the current government to do for the last 2 years when it comes to the Trans Mountain Pipeline. The commitment of this current government to that pipeline is frankly not credible. This pipeline should have been built by now. This is a government that chased off the actual builder of the pipeline, and it was forced into a position to either let it die or to nationalize it, and yet it is still under a cloud of uncertainty and not proceeding. If elected, we will do what we have said and what we've urged this government to do. Immediately refer all outstanding questions to the Supreme Court for judgment, deal with any outcomes that would result from that, use the declarative power in the Constitution, if necessary, to bring it completely under federal jurisdiction and get it built. But it's more than just the pipeline. There are so many ways in which this government has been hostile to the resource industry, which in Alberta we rely on, and but that is one that this government simply has no credibility with.
Thank you. This next question, we're going to start with Todd. A few candidates have already talked about the impact of the economy on individuals and on families. So what policies and programs do you support to help families with day-to-day struggles, from childcare to dealing with aging family members and so on?
Thank you. So honestly, the first order of business for people and affordability is to make sure that they do get good jobs and they're secure in their jobs and are able to take the steps they need to advance their family's interests. But I'll start with this. 300,000 less kids are in poverty right now due to the introduction of the Canada Child Benefit by the Liberal government in 2015. And so it's very clear for the record, Mr. Kelly and his party voted against the Canada Child Benefit, which to me is stunning. If you walk around this riding, over 20,000 kids in Rocky Ridge took the benefit of the Canada Child Benefit. Some new things on the platform is that there'll be no federal tax on the first $15,000 of income, which will help those very low-income folks. 250,000 additional preschool childcare spaces are going to be opened up by the Liberal government, which will help certainly with those single moms, those people that are struggling to find a way to make sense to get working while having their kids taken care of. And finally, on affordability, the Liberal government's pledged to knock down our cell phone bills by 25%, which to me is like 75% less than it should be, but I think that's a good start as well. Finally, pharmacare is going to cut through a lot of demographics and make life a lot more affordable for those folks that aren't lucky enough to have employment plans that pay full benefits.
All right, Tyler?
To address affordability, one blanket policy will not be enough to cover every regional difference across Canada. If you're looking at Newfoundland and comparing it to Alberta, we're both very different regionally and culturally. One of the things that we will propose is the simplified tax system that I spoke of before. Not only will that be beneficial in our riding in particular, but it will be beneficial for everybody equally. Another thing that we can do to address affordability is tackling the dairy cartel that doesn't get a lot of news coverage. If we could address the dairy cartel, we could reduce the cost of dairy, poultry, and eggs by on average of $400 a year, which would significantly help every family. As far as the housing costs, the PPC is much more interested in working closely with the governing governments to just put more trust in all different levels, that they make policy decisions that are regionally specific. For example, introducing market and regionally specific mortgage rules, which will make housing more affordable.
Shelley?
Yes. I would like to talk about one specific issue to make life more affordable for all Canadians, especially our young Canadians, young adults, and our seniors, and including those disabled. That's we need to put a cap on property tax that hurt too many of us, especially the seniors, the retired. Like in the mobile homes in Arbor Lake, for quite a few of those single seniors, it costs them half of their earnings just for those monthly payment. It's a shame. How and when, who offer our municipal government to raise our property tax randomly, like that. It's robbery. Thank you.
Well, affordability is an important issue for all Canadian families, half of whom are about $200 away from insolvency, and they need relief now. Canadian families' taxes are the single largest expense across the board to Canadian families, and tax relief is what is most needed to put more money back in the pockets of Canadians. Conservative government, if it's elected, will repeal the carbon tax. That'll be bill number 1. It's a regressive tax that harms those on low incomes who spend the highest proportion of their income on necessities of life that are made more expensive by the carbon tax. Home heating, groceries, transportation, whether you take the bus or drive a private car. In addition to that, we're going to remove the GST from home heating. In a cold country, home heating is a necessity of life. It's not a luxury and probably should never have been subject to the GST. And we're going to lower the lowest income tax bracket so that all Canadians will get a tax break from income tax relief.
Katrine?
Okay, so there's definitely a lot we can do in this area as well. And the Green Party has a lot of solutions. So I will just list them off. Universal childcare in the first year, we can probably make that happen. No university tuition. Pharmacare. Dental for low-income families. And then over the long term, we definitely need to bring in a guaranteed livable income, which will be life-changing for our entire country. Get rid of poverty. When we get rid of poverty, we get rid of healthcare issues. When we get rid of healthcare issues, we lower costs for everybody. We lower crime problems. Costs overall go down. We pay less taxes. And I think it's totally great, so we should definitely do that. Also, bringing in improving public transportation and local food. So there's lots of other things that we can do that we are not currently doing. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll just remind everybody to try to hold applause until all candidates have gone through and answered the question. And for the candidates, make sure that you eat the microphone. I think there were a few times where people weren't able to hear as well. So just try to, calm. So we've talked about caring for families within Canada, but part of the mandate of the federal government is our international commitments as well. So starting with Tyler, the question is, what commitment do you or your party have in terms of settling refugees, and what type of support does your government provide for those resettled?
We can just start off by all acknowledging that there are obvious benefits to immigration. However, currently only 26% of those refugees or immigrants are economic. The rest are refugees, chain migrants, and tourism babies, according to Stats Canada. The current system is not sustainable. The PPC has a plan to double the amount of economic immigrants to ensure it fulfills our economic needs. This is just common sense. Socially, we will put a higher focus towards helping all of these new Canadians succeed. This will ensure that Alberta sees both the social and economic net benefit of immigration.
Thank you. Shelley?
Refugees are one of the weakest group of people in Canada. I feel hurt when people show hatred against them. They are not a specific person. They are just human beings. They are like all seniors, all veterans, or disabled. Same thing. They are human beings. They deserve a decent life. It doesn't matter we can offer or not. We should be willing to. And how can we do that? We can't offer sugars. That's all just painkillers. They need a decent life. A decent life means job first. They don't want to be on benefits forever. They want their jobs. And where's the job? Where's the job that can afford your living, not minimum wage rise? We need to cut our government. They are so abusive, so they waste too much money. That's the only source. Thank you.
Pat?
Well, Canada's immigration and refugee system must be safe, compassionate, fair, rules-based, created in connection to with Canada's economic needs and the ability for new Canadians to succeed as new Canadians. We need to have immigration to Canada. I would say there is no question that immigration is a very important part of Canada's economic needs, and it's the right thing to be an accepting and welcoming country for immigrants and for refugees. But under this current Liberal government, some of the chaotic policy making and episodes that have happened under this government could not be considered safe, compassionate, fair, or rules-based. We need to get back to these core principles and ensure that Canada is able to continue to be a welcoming place for people to come to, whether for economic opportunity or whether for compassionate reasons in resettling refugees. We must adhere to these principles.
Katrina?
So Canada obviously is a multicultural nation, and we very much celebrate this as part of our identity. So with that in mind, the Green Party definitely wants to increase the number of refugees to our country, partly because the Green Party's values of nonviolence, social justice, respect for diversity, encourage us as a group of people to really want to build our humanitarian and compassionate abilities in this country. So we must welcome people. There will be many more people wanting to come to our country, especially as the climate is changing. We are going to have a lot of climate-based refugees in the very near future. So rather than closing our doors and reacting with fear, let's put a plan in place to welcome everybody, have everybody feel that they can be part of our society. Thank you.
Todd?
So I tell you what, the bottom line for me is I believe in people, and I believe in Canadians. I believe in new Canadians. We're not, any of us, really that far from it. My grandparents were farmers from Germany. My wife's parents were blue-collar folks from Malaysia. And so I like it when people want to come here. I agree that there has to be, we have to honor our international obligations and our own internal rules with respect to new Canadians. And the refugees that come here need to be treated with respect and processed with respect. And I get that some cities, and frankly not Alberta, but some cities bear the brunt of those economic costs, and those cities and those communities need to be compensated. But in a larger base thing, I believe in the Liberal government's plan on about a 10% immigration policy, which frankly serves our interests because we get a lot of skills and enthusiasm with the new Canadians that come across our borders.
Thank you. So we're going to start with Xiaoli on this one. What is Canada's responsibility to help care for the vulnerable globally? So not just in terms of refugees, but how we provide aid externally to Canada. And what steps are needed to make that a reality?
I'm in a group of a human rights non-profit organization. I have specific concerns of Canada's human rights condition. Very recently, there's a case. I'm going to sue Alberta Health Service and Calgary Police. I called Calgary Police already. There's a lady, she had social phobia. She didn't see any other person other than her husband for over 20 years. She was a talent. Her husband, the landlord, both warned Urban Health Service not to search his home. They didn't. They break into her home. She passed away within a month. That's a second-degree murder. Before we solve all human rights issues here in Canada, I feel ashamed to talk about other issues around the globe. Thank you.
Pat?
Well, Canada has an obligation to help the world's most vulnerable. There are many people in this world. I think of the children of conflict zones and people that live in the most grinding and horrific poverty. We need to help these people. And if a conservative government will redirect our current aid envelope to target the very most vulnerable, target $700 million toward the very most vulnerable people in the world. Overall, our aid package ends up funding middle to higher income countries, regimes that are in some cases hostile to Canada and to Canadian values. And for that reason, the Conservative government, if elected, will reduce our overall aid expenditure, but increase funds targeted to the world's most vulnerable.
Katrina?
So the Green Party, of course, wants to save the whole world as well. We definitely must increase our ability to help those around the world. Right now, our amount that we give for foreign aid, for example, is quite low. We are supposed to be working towards a goal of 0.7% of our GDP. So that is quite a lot more than what we are currently doing. Also, we support the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which will help us work as a world population towards what we need to do. And the Green Party is actually a worldwide organization. I'm not sure if you know this, but there's a Green Party in most of the countries around the world, so we are well placed as Greens to work together with all the other countries to make things happen. Thank you.
Todd?
Thank you. So I often hear that, listen, Canada is only a small country. We actually only have 0.5% of the world's population, or roughly, 36, 37 million people. But I absolutely see Canada taking a leadership role in many international aspects, including participation at the United Nations, participation in humanitarian missions with the United Nations, contributing to the most vulnerable around the world, seeing that our money gets to those causes, and really establishing Canada as a leading light internationally. I think there's reasons why people want to come here, and one of those reasons is they see Canada acting externally, responsibly, and charitably.
Tyler?
On the world stage, Canada's role should always be to maintain peaceful order, but not to get involved in foreign conflicts unless there are compelling reasons to do so. We could save billions of dollars by abandoning dysfunctional UN-based policies, and Canada should really be focusing on assistance only to those who need it most, only the ones that are in refugee camps, and we should really be leading by example on the global stage.
Thank you. So the next topic we're going to talk about is the environment. So starting with Pat, what measures do you propose to care for and protect the environment in Canada, and for Canada to do its part and care for and protect the global environment?
Well, the Canada needs to be part of an international solution when we deal with international environmental questions, because carbon emissions, for example, don't know borders. So a target that punishes Canadian businesses, or a system, an environmental policy like a carbon tax that harms Canadian consumers and harms Canadian businesses and displaces carbon from Canada to other jurisdictions, is not part of a global solution. It's part of shifting emissions from one jurisdiction to another. So we will repeal the carbon tax. It harms Canadians and has proven to not be able to lead Canada to its Paris targets. And we also need to have an environmental policy that does focus on some of the fundamentals of clean water, clean air, and clean soil in Canada. There are large cities in Canada that dump raw sewage into rivers and oceans, and that's shameful in Canada in 2019. We need to work with municipalities to improve our own environmental stewardship within Canada and be able to displace coal-fired electrical generation in other parts of the world with Canadian produced natural gas, for example. So there's a lot that Canada can do to displace carbon or to reduce the global carbon footprint without harming Canadian consumers and Canadian industry.
Katrina.
So, environmental measures to care for the environment in Canada and around the world. We would put in place a right to a healthy environment, ban neonicotinoid, I can't say that word, sorry, pesticides, which kill bees, absolutely. Ban geophosphate-based herbicides, ban toxins in personal care products, we are also part of the environment. Plant 1 billion trees, or 10 billion trees, because we must regrow our forests. They're all getting burned down and killed by pine beetles, so let's get going on that right away. Also, we can bring in regenerative agriculture. Rather than having all these fields that are depleting soil, we can rebuild our soils all the way across the whole country. This is another way to employ people. And also, we do agree with keeping sewage out of the oceans. And just as a side note, fracked gas has the same emissions as coal, so we should not be sending fracked gas to China.
Todd.
So let me start by saying this. I believe global warming is happening. I believe that action against climate change is desperately needed. And I believe that we need to do something now. In fact, we need to do something probably 10 or 20 years ago. So I'll start with that. Andrew Scheer, a day after the climate marches, stood up at a news conference and said, hey, listen, don't worry about it. Canada only is responsible for 1.5% or something of the world's greenhouse gases. Well, Mr. Scheer, Canada only has 0.5% of the world's population. That's not leadership and that's not responsibility. So I do support a price on pollution. The economists and all the experts say that that's the most easiest and the most transparent, effective way to reduce carbon footprints. But we need to make this more individualized. That is to make sure that those that bear the brunt of it can afford it. The people that need their cars to get to work need to have a lesser burden. And we need to incentivize individuals to make better decisions and to reduce their own carbon footprint, because I absolutely believe that everybody wants to see this happen.
Tyler.
So, what will the PPC do about the climate emergency? We're being honest with Canadians about this. Humans do have some level of impact on climate change. However, that doesn't mean that there's a climate emergency. The Canadian government is making policy decisions and climate emergency-based claims on unreliable models, not historic data. According to the International Disaster Database, climate-related deaths are at an all-time low and still declining. Natural disasters are down 99% over the last decade, according to the UN ISDR. All the buzz that sea levels are steadily rising, but in reality, they are only fluctuating according to an international commission on sea level change. The greenest energy is local energy because it has a fraction of the cost and emissions to transport it where it's needed. We will use practical and realistic strategies to make sure that our natural environment is clean instead of chasing unrealistic goals that make life more expensive.
Xiaoli.
I love this controversial topic. I'm a geologist. I don't feel it fair to argue with non-geologists about climate change. I talk about geology at a million-year scale. So human beings is nothing. So we can't see that on any geological events in the geologist's eyes, never. We are in million-year scales. Human beings is nowhere. But, yeah, we know environment is our environment. We need to respect our environment, do something to help that too. Something's good, like Green Party says, that's a good goal. Yeah, it's better we can't do something. But we forget one thing, especially in Alberta, how many wildfires we had last few years. Yeah, how much carbon dioxide emissions from the wildfire. Nobody talk about that. None of those environmental protectors talk about that. Why? That's another issue of the self-regulations. It's so abusive. I always blame the government, right? Because our government can do a lot better than we can. Thank you.
Thank you. So starting with Katrina, what do you see as the most important issue for this riding, for Calgary Rocky Ridge and Calgary and Alberta, and how do you think it should be resolved?
This is a good question. Now, last election, I don't know if any of you were there in the audience, I said it was our democracy. And I still feel this a little bit. There's a lot of people that are really confused that don't know how to vote, or don't know who to vote for. A lot of people that do not want to vote and don't want to participate. So I think that is still an issue. However, we are at a tie between the environment and jobs, an absolute tie. People want jobs and environmental saving, both. We want to have it both. So let us do both. We don't have to pick jobs and then pick the environment. We can do both. It's okay. Thank you.
Todd? Do you need the question again, or are you good? I can redo. You may as well just say it again. All right. Thank you. What do you see as the most important issue for Calgary Rocky Ridge, Calgary and Alberta, and how do you think it should be resolved?
So I've got to agree with Katrina on this one. The doors I've knocked on, I've heard the same thing, which is, Todd, it's jobs. I'm worried about my job, or I'm looking for a job, or my university-age kid can't find a job. At the same time, everyone is very anxious about doing the right thing on climate change. I can say this, we're not going to pull this city out of its economic funk by cutting basic social services and giving our top earners a tax break. That won't get us there. We need to build this city by diversifying our workforce and by getting our energy to clean markets. And so again, I'll talk about this balance, which is the expansion of the Trans Mountain project. We need to get that going, and there will be a net effect, a net positive effect to this city. At the same time, we need to retrain and newly train a lot of our young people to make sure that they're nimble, because we really don't know what that next workforce and economy is going to look like. But being smart about it and being trained about it and being nimble about it will be the best way we can get there.
Tyler.
Since many of the other parties are also advocating for the pipeline, I believe one that doesn't get enough attention is the equalization formula and how unfair it is, specifically to Albertans being one of the top contributors. The PPC is a strong advocate for Albertans and the West. They will establish a new committee to review and make recommendations on a new formula that will avoid the welfare trap and reduce dependence on federal transfer payments. The new formula will still respect the Constitution and make provincial governments more responsible for policy decisions and fairness for citizens across all provinces.
Shaoli.
Yes. I strongly believe we should put all our three levels of government back on leash. Take that power back to randomly raise our living costs. Property tax, carbon tax, yeah, whole lot of issues like. Yeah, start point for our young adults is just so high. I saw so many of my neighborhoods, they have 2 adult kids stay with their family. That's not the Canada I imagined before I moved here. Thank you.
Pat?
Well, the question of what is the top issue of our own constituents here is very clear and obvious from the not only the thousands and thousands of doors that my team and I have already door knocked, but also from the thousands of pieces of correspondence and letters and phone calls that I've received in my constituency office as MP. It's jobs in the economy. That is what I hear at door after door after door. Desperation from people that haven't worked in years, people that see a federal government that is indifferent to the fact that they haven't worked in years. And that is a real problem. That is by far the #1 issue. People in our province need to get back to work. And they want to work, and they want to contribute, and they want Alberta to contribute to the national economy. And so we need to get our people back to work in Alberta.
Thank you. So obviously we had a number of questions submitted and we can't get to every one of them. We need to make sure that all the candidates have good time to answer the questions. So this is the point where we are going to close it. We are going to give each candidate 3 minutes, and I offer this as an opportunity for any of the candidates, if there's any issue that was really important to you that you didn't get a chance to talk about tonight, really use this opportunity to explain that issue and why it's important to you, and tell everyone why they should elect you as their candidate. Because in the end, at this table, you will not see Andrew Scheer, you will not see Justin Trudeau. You will see a number of local candidates who want to represent you, and that's what this is about. So we're going to start with Todd. Each candidate has 3 minutes. Please give your closing.
Thank you. So I am with the Liberal Party because I believe in the more centrist ideology. My view is that fits best for Canada and Canadian principles, and I'm a very strong believer in the Charter of Rights. And in this day and age of political strongmen in Western democracies, I think Western democracies that have charters and constitutions are very happy to have them. I'm also a tried and true Albertan, a Calgarian, and I got a confession to make. I first voted when I was 18, and I voted for Brian Mulroney. But in those days, the Conservatives were progressive Conservatives. Do I believe that Conservative leaders take this province, this city for granted? Well, let's start with this. In the last 4 years, the Liberal government's invested $2.8 billion in Calgary. In the 10 years under the Harper government, $1.4 billion was invested in Calgary. And I hear say that Stephen Harper is a Tuscany guy. Our current premier is spending my tax dollars, your tax dollars, campaigning for Andrew Scheer in Ontario. So yeah, are you kidding me? Yes, I believe Conservative leaders take our vote for granted. The good news is that I know from reaching out to you that this time you're paying more attention to the issues and your options. The undecided people in this riding, and I fully believe there's a lot of undecided people, they care about themselves, they care about their neighbors, and they care about the next generations as well. So they're asking a lot of good questions. I hope we've answered some of them tonight. 2019, frankly, it's a balancing act. We need to keep a lot of balls in the air to keep this country moving forward, and we need to pay very careful attention to this riding. So I hope we're at the point that Calgarians get it, that it's not only a Conservative MP that can represent their interests. I'm new to this, yeah, maybe I'm a bit naive, but I'll tell you that I'll work smarter and I'll work harder than any of the candidates on this stage, and I will always be honest with you, and I will always give you the full story. Calgary Rocky Ridge, make me your MP, and I'll have your back. I won't be bringing Ottawa's messages or voices to you. I'll be taking your voices to Ottawa, and believe me, I will be heard. You will be heard. Thank you again for coming tonight. I sincerely hope to have a chance to talk to anyone that wants to wander by the table and introduce themselves and find out more about what I stand for.
Tyler.
We can't always blame the last Prime Minister. Alberta lacks representation federally. We need to get our resources to market to kickstart our economy, and in turn, we will diversify our industries, knowing the unfair challenges that we have faced. The PPC recognizes that Albertans feel that we must elect a conservative government, but the problem may be much deeper than that. Alberta has sent slates of conservative MPs to Ottawa every election, yet we are still unfairly treated, often disregarded, and many of us struggle with unemployment or go out of business as a result. This riding is overwhelmingly conservatives. Those of you who are concerned with vote splitting should know that in this riding, no amount of vote splitting between Pat Kelly and I would amount to many of the other parties winning a seat. Do you want plans or unkept promises and boutique tax credits that the government thinks will serve the greatest amount of voters? The current system isn't sustainable. We need bold reforms that will benefit all income levels, all demographics, and unite all of us across this great nation. The People's Party has a plan to make the lives more affordable for all Canadians, a plan to balance the budget and secure our children's future. Our platform is the most beneficial not only for all Canadians, but all Albertans. This election cycle, as the candidate for Calgary Rocky Ridge, I'm putting Alberta first. Thank you.
Shali.
My name is Shaoli Wang. I want to say that again. I'm here in Calgary, in Canada for 12 years only. I joined the election as an independent for one reason. Canada is a democratic country. Yeah, we love that. But within our parties, I don't see much democracy. There's only pretty much one voice. But in my family, 3 of us, we have 3 voices, mostly. That is called democracy. Thank you. I feel many of people's voices are ignored. Many of people's or weak Canadians are forgotten, or seniors especially. That is why I chose to step forward as an independent. I want to be people's voice, not for me. It's nothing about me. People's voice. All seniors are forgotten by every of our party. When Liberal talked about benefits to bring our seniors over 75 out of poverty, I feel happy. All leaders are aware. Some of seniors are in poverty already. But I feel very unhappy. Those under 75 are ignored. That is unfair, right? Everyone is gonna expect to go to that age. You don't want to see yourself struggling at 75 or around. That's inhumane. I don't have those resources to go door to door. I went to $3,000. But those $30 I knocked at a mobile home, that really broke my heart. I can't afford to go another $30. I woke up at night, I'm crying. My parents are at around 80 years old. I can't even imagine if I leave them struggling. It's a shame. So I want to be the voice for people, and this solution, I offer the solution. Nobody have the balls to talk about. The big fat government need the decent cut every of the 3 levels. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And again, I must say that it has been a tremendous honor and privilege to be your member of Parliament for the past 4 years. I've taken my responsibilities very seriously during that time. I've sent over 2,000 unique responses to letters and emails and phone calls that have come from constituents to my office. We've processed over 500 case files on behalf of constituents that have come to my office for help with their dealings with departments and agencies of the federal government. I've used my voice on your behalf over 350 times in different debates in the House of Commons and over 1,000 times at committee. But most importantly, I've voted over 1,100 times on bills and motions on the floor of the House of Commons as your voice in Ottawa. So I invite anyone to please look at my track record. It's all right there on the Commons website as well as my social media feeds. I'm very proud of the work that my caucus colleagues and I have done over the past 4 years in opposition to this federal government. This government was elected 4 years ago with great promise. It promised to deliver a transformational infrastructure program, and it does a lot of re-announcing of old money, but not so much on the actual construction of infrastructure. It promised small deficits and a return to balance by 2019. It promised everything from electoral and access to information reform and unprecedented openness and transparency and the highest ethical standards. And it has failed utterly and completely and totally on all of these counts. This government has instead given us unprecedented corruption, including 4 separate breaches of the Conflict of Interest Act, one from the Minister of Finance for not disclosing the company that owns his French villa. That was after telling small business owners that they're a bunch of tax cheaters. One from the Fisheries Minister, who gave a fish quota to a company connected to his family and to Liberal friends. And 2, of course, from the Prime Minister himself. So this current government has demonstrated that it is wholly and totally unfit to govern Canada. And I can only assume that if this government is re-elected, it will conclude that Canadians think that corruption is okay, that corruption has become normal in Canada, and this can't be allowed to happen. Fortunately, there is hope. There's a positive Conservative vision for Canada, one where Albertans can get back to work and once again become the economic engine for Canada. One where Canadian families can have more money in their pockets from lower income taxes and by eliminating the carbon tax. And one where small business owners are respected for being the backbone of the Canadian economy and not cheaters. This is a positive Conservative vision, and it's possible. I've never taken the support of our community for granted. I've worked hard as your member of Parliament and will continue to do so if re-elected. There will be much hard work again, but there's hope. And together, we can get our country back on track by electing a Conservative government on October 21st.
So, my name is Katrina Wright. Thank you very, very much for having me here today. It is very nice to see all of you who are interested in politics and thinking seriously about this. And I am running for the Green Party because, specifically this time, we are in a dire environmental emergency on so many fronts. If you do not believe me, please watch the video Planet Ocean. You can Google search it. It's not just climate, it is biodiversity losses because we are putting pesticides all over the place, plowing down trees, burning up everything. We are also going through, as consumers, things so fast that we are due to run out of materials to make stuff with by 2050. We must absolutely have environmental action this year. No more waiting. Now I'm going on to the fast reading part. It has been an anxiety-riddled 7 years for so many of us waiting for the supposed pipeline holy grail. Will it or won't it? We are stuck in fear. If it's built, all our eggs are still in the oil basket, floating off toward the oily cliff of runaway climate change, with food shortages, more extreme weather events, and wars. We cannot fix our country with a boutique tax cut, nor with the broken promises of corrupt politicians. Let's get the corporations out of politics and the politics out of science. These are our lives, and because of our electoral system and the values of the old line parties, we are playing a roll the dice, oh too bad you lose game each time we have an election. Let's get unstuck, diversify, turn the wheel toward the horizon, the new horizon. This year, 2019, is the year saving the world is the most important thing we can do with our votes. And I have a secret to tell you. It's not about winning. We are all on the same side. We all want things to be better, and we need to work for the collective goal of a less adversarial world. The future isn't wars and famine, misery and extinction. It is the future we choose. And we choose the future that is hopeful and compassionate, that ends suffering and inequality, that people are healthy and loved and have good relationships. Democracy is about empowering people to shape our collective future. Not right, not left, forward together.
So this is going to end our program. I'd like each candidate to, give applause to each candidate once again. So we've got Tyler Poulin of the PPC. We have Todd Cathell of the Liberal Party of Canada. We have Katrina Wright of the Green Party of Canada. We have Pat Kelly of the Conservative Party of Canada. And possibly the person who's got the toughest job, the independent, Xiaoli Wang. It is not easy being a candidate, especially in the age of social media. Even if you disagree vehemently with somebody up here, make sure that you take the time to thank them for running. They are doing a public service. They are doing this because they want a better country. They may disagree on the way that we get there, but they are doing it because they are trying to serve this country. So it's really important to acknowledge their contribution. It's also really important to acknowledge the contribution of their significant others and family who have to deal with this for the period of time. I would like to take the opportunity to thank all of the community associations who made this possible. This is the only forum for this riding, so thank you for putting this together. Thank you especially to Jim Palmer, who this is the fourth one I've been involved with and the fifth one he's put together. So thank you very much to everybody involved, all of the volunteers. It's important that we do this, and hello to everybody on the internet. Thank you again.